Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 783. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 783. I started off with d4. My opponent went d5. And after c4, played c6. We get a traditional Slav defense. I go knight f3, avoiding the win-hour gambit, and he plays e6, which is the second choice here and leads to some interesting lines. Let's see, I went with knight c3, which is the main move, although I frequently will play with e3, the second choice there, and just avoid those lines where black takes on c5. So after knight c3, he went bishop d6. The main move here is knight f6. We transpose back into that line, so it's not like we really get too far astray here. But he could have taken. It's like the second choice here. And after that, you play a4. Something I'm going over this to help remind myself in case I find myself in this position again. So it is okay to play the two knights out like that, but you should remember this a4 move, and that discourages black from playing b5 and knight f6, e3 now, attacking the pawn, and then c5. So instead of trying to hold on to that pawn, just opening things up with c5, and it leads to an interesting and complicated position. So that's okay. I mean, white still has that opening advantage, so nothing too bad for that from white's point of view, but it's interesting for black as well. Let's see, he went bishop d6, and I went e3 at this point, and after knight f6, and I go bishop d3, then we've transposed back into a line where there's more example games, back to 130 games. And if I played queen c2 here, we'd be back into an absolute main line. You know, the funny thing is, I don't know. I don't have such a good impression of the queen c2 move. The thing is, I always want to get the bishop to c2 and the queen to d3 and set up the battery with the queen in front of the bishop. Of course, it's slower. It takes an extra move. But it seems like, well, the queen on c2 is going to have to move again at some point anyway, because it's not too hard for, after this battery is set up, all that black needs to do to meet that challenge to the h7 pawn is just play h6, which he often wants to play anyway, so it doesn't seem like it's such a big threat. I mean, it is putting more pressure on the center, and it's also taking a look at the c file, where sometimes there can be tactics on the c file, so I'm sure it's a good move. It just seems a little counterintuitive to me. Maybe that's the way to put it. Anyway, so I just castle here, and he castled, and then I went with e4. Once again, queen c2 is the main move there. But e4 is not bad, because after either of these exchanges, d takes c4 or d takes e4. There's two main ways of playing it. White is left with two pawns in the center and a slight space advantage, and black still has this backwards bishop. So it'll take him a move or two to unwind that and go after my center. So, you know, it leaves white with a slight edge. He took on e4, but it also leaves white with some interesting attacking chances on this diagonal. And here he avoids the main line. The main line is to just take. And just to show, yeah, what we see in practice here, what I see in practice, knight takes, bishop takes, and then you know, it shows h6 is the main move here, but what I see most often in practice is knight f6, and I think it's a good move. It's getting the bishop, getting a replacement knight into that good square on f6, defending h7, and also kicking this bishop and gaining a tempo. Bishop drops back, and this is the kind of position I've been in many times. And as I said, I still think white has a slight advantage because of the space. But black can organize either an e5 push or a c5 push to gain a little space and give this bishop somewhere to go. And black should be okay in this position as well. Anyway, he didn't go with that, though. He left the pieces in play and went bishop e7 in this position, which seems like a bit of a time waste. He's just dropping the bishop back. Well, it was under fire, so I guess that if you're not taking the knight, that's your only other choice. And defending the f6 square. So this is not such a bad position just yet. His actual mistake comes later, but it's by avoiding this trade he gradually gets into some trouble. Let's see. b3 and queen e2 are both moves that have been played here. I went with bishop g5. Still okay. Okay, and we're just out of the book at this point. He went rook e8. Here he could also have played knight takes e4. And now it's a little more complicated. I have to trade bishops here. Although, you know, I kind of want to get rid of that good bishop that he has, so I'm not too unhappy with this. And queen takes and I take. And now he can play e5 and kind of break out this way. So this is still a playable position for black with just a slight opening advantage for white. You know, I was wondering about various lines like can the knight move with tempo here, hitting the queen. So I was just checking this out with the chess engine, and it found a nice little refutation of this idea. So this actually ends up being worse for black. Even though the material comes out about the same. And this is this idea, bishop takes h7. So if you want to think about this for a second, you might want to try and figure out what the tactical idea is here. Okay, I'm giving the answer away, so if you want to think about it some more, pause the video. Notice that both queens are on fire, and if I could move my queen with check, then I would be able to win his queen. I'd just be up massive amounts of material. So that means his king can't take the bishop. So I've just kind of snagged that pawn for free. Of course, he got a pawn for free as well on f2. So it's a trade of the h7 pawn for the f2 pawn. But he can't take the bishop. He has to go king h8. And then I can take the knight. And now he can take this bishop, and I can retreat my other bishop. And as I said, the material is even. Both have a bishop and a knight, 2 rooks and a queen, and the same number of pawns. We both have 6 pawns each because he grabbed the f pawn and I grabbed the h pawn. But, well, his bishop is still on the back rank, so there's a huge development advantage for white. And secondly, this h-file is open, so white has dangerous attacking ideas. Immediate queen d3 is a forcing move, but well, he can block it. I mean, he's not getting mated, but it's a pretty big advantage for white, probably winning. Anyway, so the point is after knight takes e4, he should probably still play that, but he has to just grab the bishop and go for this kind of thing with counterplay. Let's see. He went with rook e8, avoiding the trade. I went bishop c2, preparing to line up this battery. He went queen b6, taking a look at the b pawn. And I figured out that I could actually ignore the threat to the b pawn and just play queen d3. And that's correct. It's not really safe for him to take on b2. He really needs to play at this point knight takes e4. This is kind of his last chance. And he didn't. He played queen to a5. And this just gives me a winning advantage. Although I don't play the best moves, so it's kind of the game continues for a while longer than maybe it should have. But anyway, it should be game over at this point because of this tactic. First of all, I just trade off. Hey, it's pretty simple. I'm just trading off all the pieces that are in the way of this battery, and he's just left with nothing to defend it and no time to defend it either, because all these exchanges come with tempo. He's just going to end up a piece down if he doesn't take back. So I get to this point, and let's see. Played king there. I went rook fe1. This is still a good continuation, bringing more force into the fire. And you know, I want to try and open up that e-file and mate him if I can. He went bishop d7, trying to get his pieces in the game. And then this bishop d3 move that I played. This is where the advantage drops. One key idea here is the move g4. Let's see, the chess engine says you can play g4 immediately, or you can play, say, rook here first, preparing to push these pawns forward. Say rook here, and then g4. And it's not quite clear. It wasn't immediately clear to me what this was for, because a g4 pawn is stopped by the queen and the bishop. But it is... it's actually pretty dangerous here. Let's see. Suppose this bishop drops back out of the way, so his rook is looking at the center, and I play g5 here. Bishop takes. And how does this go? Rook takes. Oh, rook to e5. That was the idea. That was the idea I was missing. So it's not really true that that pawn is unprotected. That the rook is actually defending it indirectly through this tactic. So so that loses material. So this is and otherwise, if he can't take that pawn, then you know, this is dangerous because it pushes the bishop back, and then I'll have this check and take the g pawn if nothing better. So anyway, this g4 move is a key perk of this position. And one more idea. Now I was also thinking during the game that if I just played rook a to d1 here, he might grab here and be able to get away with it. Let's see, pushing on with d5 is my idea with the rook to d1. Grabs on b2. If the queen grabs on b2, rook to b1, and I'm skewering the queen, and my rook comes into b2, and this is also winning. So, and notice my queen is defending the bishop. So anyway, this is rook to d1 is also good in that line. In fact, queen takes a2 is a mistake. Let's see. There's another line coming up that illustrates the point of g4, which is after bishop b3. That's the way I played. He went king e7. He could have, at this very moment, played queen to f5 and forced a queen trade. This is what I didn't see. And notice that if I had played g4 here, that would have prevented the queen from coming to that square. So that was the second idea of g4. The first idea is to come forward and just push this bishop away, but the second idea is to control the f5 square and don't allow this queen f5 move. But after queen f5, you see the queen has no good squares. If I come here, the king just steps out of the way, and my queen is kind of trapped. Well, it has to go to a square where it gets exchanged, because all of these squares are under attack from black's pieces. There's a pawn, there's a queen, there's a bishop, and there's the queen. So there's no escape from my queen. I can't avoid the trade. So the best is to just go ahead and take and play on. So you know, this is still a position where white has the advantage, even though the material's even. White's better pawn structure and better development is more than enough to overcome them. You know, black does have the advantage of the bishop pair, but anyway, at this point the balance still favors white. But he didn't play the queen f5 move. He started running with his king away from the center, and now I think my advantage, well, you know, I keep a pretty decent advantage through this part. Let's see, d5, he went rook to h8 to chase my queen away, drop my queen back to e4, and then he went king d8. This is kind of, I think this is his last chance to get some kind of position. I mean, king to f8 puts up a better fight. Maybe that's the way. I still have the advantage here. After king f8, I can go knight e5 and bring the knight into the game. Oh, not knight d4. Yeah, knight d4 is dangerous because of rook to d4. Don't want to play that. Knight e5. And then say the queen comes back to defend the pawn and help defend the king a little bit. Queen f4, king to g8, and rook a to d1. So there's kind of this gradual buildup of forces, and the attack continues. So with an advantage to white, but it's a longer game. After king d8, once again, there's opportunities to finish the game pretty quickly. Let's see. So I took on e6. It's not bad. He took and went rook a to d1, pinning his bishop. He went queen to c7. And right here I played h3 because he was starting to gang up on the h-pawn, and I wanted to be free to move my knight. But there was a much quicker win. Oh, h3 is still winning, so I would say from king d8 to the end, I still had the winning advantage all the way, but there were quicker wins. And one of them was right here, and it's this nice move, c5. Like I said, there's no immediate threat to the h-pawn, and what c5 does is, I play this move later. It's opening up the bishop to attack the e-pawn. So it was one of my ideas, was putting the bishop on this diagonal, so it's natural to open it up. But also, I'm doing it at a moment where the bishop is pinned to the king. So even if the rook comes over, I take, he's trying to take advantage of the pin. I mean, well, actually, the chess engine just wants to give up the exchange here. So there was not a whole lot he could do there. Yeah, if he doesn't take. what else? What else could he play? How about if he just unpinned, threatening to take the bishop? Now it's attacked twice and defended twice. Yeah, I can just step aside, and if he takes, I can still cancel that. If he takes, I can still take back with the rook. So, yeah, so he's not going to be able to get away with capturing a piece there, and I've just destroyed his center, and his king has been driven to a bad square. So anyway, that's the way to play it. C5 right here. I played H3, and the rest of the game I just keep that two-pawn edge that I... well, actually, I haven't won that pawn yet. But anyway, the chess engine rates this as about +2. This trade, you know, he loses the bishop pair advantage after that trade, and at this point, I managed to grab the second pawn here, which leads to an endgame, rook and pawn endgame, which is pretty easily winning. Have these nice pawns over on the king side that I can push forward. And, you know, he managed to buy some time checking my king, but I can use my pawns as a shield here and just push them forward. And as I'm pushing my pawns forward, he brings his rook over to capture my pawns on the queen side, but you know, my pawn is just too far advanced at this point. And after he captured one more pawn, he resigned. The queen is going to be able to stop those pawns. They're too far back, so there's no problem there. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.